Hi there everybody, my name is Kate. Welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. We're caravanning again today. I am. Thank you for joining me. I was just listening to someone on a YouTube channel, and she was talking about someone that has severe OCD, and it reminded me almost instantly of an experience I had when I was married. And when I was married, I was extremely OCD, extremely anxiety ridden. I had all kinds of mental health diagnoses, and extreme OCD, control issues all day about how things were placed, what they looked like, what the standard of, clean and neat and organized was. And it wasn't anything that made sense to anybody else, but it made sense to me. And it brought back the memory of this instance almost instantly, that I was shocked by how viscerally I remembered it. Let me just tell you, I'm not married anymore, and I'm not dishing it back to my marriage and saying that I was OCD because of the marriage itself. I was OCD and anxiety ridden and had a lot of mental health issues for a lot of different reasons, but let me get to the story. When I was, and first of all, let me preface it too by saying I do have autism, and so having routine and having things be the same and having things that are comforting to me is very important to me. And that's part of why it was such a problem during my married years, because that diagnosis was not really what was handed to me. It wasn't what was emphasized. I was diagnosed years ago. However, somehow other diagnoses that weren't relevant got piled in, and medications did too. And so it really wasn't meeting my need, and my body, my mind, everything was trying to meet my need to deal with my neurological system and my anxiety and my control issues by controlling my environment, because I couldn't control what was happening in my mind with, scattered thoughts and having ADHD as well, and being all over the place. Then I controlled my environment. It's kind of a common theme of OCD is, if I can't control me, then I'm going to control thee and the environment to every bit of it that I can, depending on where on the spectrum we are. Well, go back, this has been probably, gosh, at least 15, maybe even 20 years ago. I can't believe I remembered it, but I felt it like it hit, that when I got in the shower, I took a cup of water, because I had so many dental sensitivities at the time, a lot of dental sensitivities with cold water, that made brushing my teeth very painful. So what I would do is I would take the cup of water that I was going to use when I brushed my teeth, after I got out of my shower, of course, all in proper order, that I warmed up the water and I sat it down, I heated it up or got it out of the faucet hot and put it on the countertop to be cooling while I was in the shower. And so it was just the right temperature of lukewarm by the time I got out of the shower and was ready for me to brush my teeth. Otherwise, at the time, hygiene was kind of an issue, and it might not have gotten done. And yeah, so, I needed it to be, I felt like I really needed it to be, and at the time, I really did need it to be a very specific protocol for how that got done. Well, I was in the shower doing my thing, and I remember my ex-husband commenting on it a few times. He goes, "Why do you put water on the counter like that? Why don't you just get it out?" And I was like, "Dude, just please leave me alone." And I tried to explain to him about, the same way that I laboriously just explained it to you, that it's just the right temperature. And, to be fair, it's a lot, he didn't care really. And I was irritated because I'm meeting my need, leave me alone. There's a whole backstory that you don't want to hear about and that bores you, and yet you're asking me to explain me, Lucy, why do you care? And so I got, ultra hella defensive about it, like, leave my water alone. That's kind of the autistic side of me, that my tolerance for that kind of mess is way low. Sometimes it used to be a lot lower. Now, it's insanely higher, because I don't live with anybody who messes with my water. But he questioned it several times, and he's like, well, why don't you just, and you know, that's very common that we do this to one another, that why don't you just do it this way? Because for whatever reason, we don't have an issue with something. Sometimes we're completely intolerant and not very sensitive to the needs of somebody else and why they need to do something, particularly when it looks weird or it seems illogical or, you know, stupid or whatever, or it's OCD. And I get accused of that a lot, and it was fair because I am, you know, I'm controlling what I need to not lose my mind. Could you please, you know, just buzz off and leave me alone to do that so I don't know, bite you or something, okay? You know, please just go away. Well, I was in the shower unsuspecting, you know, of what was happening outside my shower, just, you know, a couple of feet away, with my water. My ex-husband came in while I was in the shower, and he dumped the water out, and just put the water back, dumped the water out and put the cup back. And this isn't to make him a bad guy. It's really not. I'm not sure why he did it. I doubt that he did it to be malicious. I have no idea. I don't know why he wouldn't have remembered that it was, you know, really effing important to me. However, you know, I don't know. I didn't, you know, interrogate him to ask. I just lost my mind because I got out and my water was dumped out and the cup put back, and I lost my absolute ever-loving mind and was like screaming. I mean, one of those autistic meltdowns, immediate, you know, and at the time they were calling it a bipolar meltdown. You're manicking. I'm like, no, I'm really pissed. There's a difference. But at the time I really didn't know how to articulate that. But I looked at him and I was just absolutely destroyed, and he was kind of looking at me like, what is your problem? It's water, you know. I'm sorry, I forgot or whatever. I don't remember that part of it. I just remember feeling like I had been stabbed right in the heart with, how dare you? You know that this is something important to me. How could you mess with this? What were you trying to do to me? It went into all kinds of victimization of what this man was plotting against me to just help me lose my mind. And like I said, I highly doubt that there was anything that sinister about it. It was mostly probably just thoughtless and, you know, oh, well, you know, there's a cup with water here. I have no idea. Like I said, I kind of skipped over the whole why did you do that portion of it, and, you know, actually retain any answer that he gave me, because I'm sure that I was screaming a lot of things, and probably why would you was amongst them. However, what was most important today as I'm remembering that is that pardon me, got Roadster coming up beside with a little bit of a tood. Okay, I'm trying to get out of the way here. I really am. I don't want to be fighting people for space they don't care to have. Good Lord, it's all over the place. Good grief. So anyway, as I said, I highly doubt there was something sinister about it, but I felt like it was. I felt like it was a very intimate jab at something that for me was what I had the littlest control of, you know, in my life, you know, was please allow me to have control over how I take care of my hygiene, which is really on the line some days whenever I can't even get myself out of bed, you know. So what could you be thinking? And it was such a victimized and tiny space for me to be in, to feel so small and so wounded. And that's what I realized this morning, right down to my core, is it went flash back to that feeling of ew. And then I realized I don't ever feel that way anymore. You know, I'm divorced, I live by myself, all of that. However, what really came to me to understand better about myself is that most of my OCD, most of my anxiety was because I wasn't able truly to regulate me, to regulate my emotions, to regulate how I felt, to regulate my energy, or how I was expending it, how I was saving it, storing it, and how I was throwing it out there. It was completely all over the place, very imbalanced and very dysregulated and unregulated a lot. And it was poorly regulated by a whole lot of psychotropic medications that were helping me to not have any idea what was going on a whole lot. And it's not disparaging of mental health or psychiatry or any kind of mental health medication management. It's just that those were the wrong meds for me. And so medication was dueling itself in my body. My mind was, you know, active with codependent issues, which caused the anxiety that I need this to be this way, and it's going to destroy my whole world if this cup isn't positioned this way, if this isn't done this way, if this doesn't happen on this day. And yet nothing was making any sense with all of it, because there were days when I didn't do any of it. So, you know, there's different diagnoses really mean different things, and they really need to be treated very differently. In my case, they absolutely did, because trying to manage, what wasn't the correct diagnosis left me with OCD that I really never really truly had for realsy. Anxiety is, an extreme form of it for me was the OCD, that the more anxious I became over years and years of misdiagnosis and, just improper situations and imbalance and codependency relationships that were very toxic, just kept stepping up that anxiety to the point that where I could control, that's where I went with it, is I'll control my environment. But I wasn't always interested in doing that. And so it didn't make any sense to any casual observer. It made sense to me in my illogical mind and in my, toxic mind and my codependency. It made sense to me, but to a casual observer, it's like, how can you be so functional sometimes and absolutely, off the rails other times, and angry about it, these major meltdowns? And it was such a relief to realize that when I thought about it this morning, that I remember that cup, and what a relief it is to know that I don't live like that anymore. I'm not triggered to a point of feeling like I really want to just, go completely bananas and apeshit with somebody if they touch my stuff. I have very little concern about it. I'm also not challenged by anybody being in my environment, possibly moving my stuff, so, and that's better for me. However, it just really emphasized for me the fact that so much of those anxieties for many people are because we're trying to control and manage and manipulate the things outside of us that don't feel good, that really we don't have as much control, or we don't have as much management ability as we would appreciate. We don't have as much regulation as we would appreciate. And codependency, when we're not able to fully understand that we're being micromanaged on some level in a codependent relationship, because that's what they are, then if we're trying to codependently manage either our environment or someone else or somebody else, pretty much routinely, that's what codependency buys us. And depending on how extremely deep-seated we are in it, will be the degree that we have that anxiety and OCD and control issues and manipulation, and it just goes all on a continuum. And for me, I really never wanted to control other people exactly. I mean, I did want people to behave the way that I wanted them to behave, of course. However, I was all about, let me make sure that if I have my environment good, then I'm good. And it really did help, because it set up at least the foundational understanding that, okay, my environment is at least not distressing me visually or auditorily. Is that a word? My auditory senses are not being tapped. That I'm keeping my five senses at a minimum, which was crucial, because everywhere else that it was being tapped was tapping hard. So if I could keep my environment looking and feeling comfortable and comforting, then it kept me at a lower level of that anxiety. And so those fixations on those things that were incredibly important, seeming important, and being very important, and that I would go to the mat and rip people's throats out if they messed with it, kind of important, that was the deep-seated attachment to it. They were there to keep me safe. And to me, that moment when I realized that my cup was gone, he poured my water out. Not only was I not safe, because my teeth might not get brushed for the next 3 weeks, oh dear, I mean, I ran into extremes, right? My teeth are falling out now forever. Then it ran into, and he's not safe, I'm not safe, he's not safe, this house isn't safe, and it went on into the panic and the anxiety of extremism of, this is now, I'm going to start thinking of the worst case scenario of what it possibly could be, and start assuming that it's all of that. And I'm absolutely not saying that my ex-husband did that to be mean or, cruel. He could have been, like I said, I don't know. It wasn't his nature to do things like that exactly. He would dig, but that wasn't really, that seemed out of character for him. But it didn't matter, because that's the amount of wounding that I had from, just growing up in a very wounding environment, and understanding not one little bit about truly understanding codependency and addictions and addictive personalities, and then dealing with the toxic environment, that it was too much, and I absolutely could not get myself out of that flat spin of I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe. And that was something that I said routinely. And of course, you know, it offends people whenever we say sometimes, like, I don't feel safe. Well, why don't you feel like you can trust me? Because you moved my cup, you know? And I believe we did have that conversation, or we had similar ones, you know, related to that. Like, you moved something or you threw something away that, you know, I had sitting right there, you know, for 3 weeks, and I was going to, you know, do it today, or whatever. I mean, whatever I had in my mind that was very real and was a real legit thing. I did say that whenever things got disturbed, like, how could you do that? It means I can't trust you. And the other side is looking at me like, what is your problem? You know, it's just a cup of water. But for me, because of all that back history that nobody else needs to know about it. However, if you ask about it, I explain myself, and then, you know, you monkey with it some more. I'm thinking you're insensitive, you're thoughtless, you're mean, you're cruel. I mean, it went down the whole line until I just can't trust you. I absolutely can't trust you. You're not trustworthy, and you're not safe. And you know, I wasn't unsafe on any physical level whatsoever from this person. I just was not. That would not be fair to say. However, it certainly made me feel very unsafe. And the minute that I felt even the whisper of not feeling safe, then it spun off to, you know, he might as well have been Jeffrey Dahmer. You know, I mean, I was not going to be talked down off of that ledge easily. It was going to take time and usually medication to fall asleep, way asleep, you know, and cope with the panic attack just going away on its own, and then bringing myself back to some sense of semblance and order and safety again, that you've got no evidence of this friend that, you know, he's mean, hateful, and, you know, trying to stab you, and that your life is on the line. But that's certainly what it felt like. And so when this person that I was listening to talked about OCD, that just, it really brought it back for me that, wow, that was a difficult time of my life, you know. My whole adult life pretty much was spent living in some state of, you know, panic and anxiety, and, you know, self-esteem issues, because I'm constantly worried about, you know, how I'm going to interface with other people, and my extreme, you know, need to control how I feel and how I look, and, you know, masking and stuff. So proper diagnosis is huge, and proper treatment and therapeutic intervention is huge. And unfortunately, you know, I wasn't receiving the correct information or the correct diagnoses, and therefore was on a whole, you know, medication regime that just wasn't correct for me. And then moving through everything codependent about me, you know, while trying to manage mental health issues that really were not quite there, were actually kind of instigated by being improperly diagnosed. So sometimes the OCD can be managed by, you know, being able to intervene at a level of, how can I keep this from going into that flat spin? How can I make sure that my environment is friendlier and is more copacetic, so that I don't feel like I'm out of control? How can I meet my needs inside so that I reach peace and calm and don't have as much of a need to get busy with controlling the actual environment or controlling someone else? Because it doesn't work. We're always subject to somebody else having their own mind, even if we've been able to bully them or boss them or manage them or whatever we call that successfully. You know, not everybody will be. So it's just, it's not flawless, and environment can change in a heartbeat. Like, somebody moves your cup and your heartbeat ceases for a second, going, what in the world was he thinking? Oh my God, you know. So I encourage anybody that if you're dealing with issues having to do with anxiety and OCD, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. There's a root cause for it, and there's a way to desensitize and get, you know, better about being able to, you know, cope when things don't go our way, or we don't have that sense of stability and safety. There's a way to create safety within us that we take with us everywhere we go. And that doesn't mean that we necessarily give up on, you know, the law and order that we'd like to have in our environment. I'm still, you know, I like things to be organized a certain way. However, it no longer wrecks my whole day or stops me solid or cold when something does not go my way, or when my environment is a little bit, you know, messier perhaps than I'd prefer. You know, I'm just not about it. My priority is this today, and that will have to be tomorrow. And because there's not so much tapping on every other nerve in my nervous system, you know, that that's requiring me to mask and brace, and wait for impact and combat roll everywhere, trying to, dodge all the icky feelings, it makes it easier to cope with that and be able to stand in that logical space of, hey, I've got peace and calm in my heart, and I can stand with the logical place that says, yeah, that messy desk over there isn't the priority today. The priority is this. We're going out and we're doing this today instead. It makes it easier to cope with that, whereas in the past, I'd see a messy desk, a messy this, a messy that, and everything. It was an all or nothing, which is very common, to have that kind of, black, white, all or nothing thinking that if I can't clean the desk in the whole house today, then, oh, well, never mind. And then I'm a terrible person because of it. So reaching that place of calm and that space of really being able to embrace the I'm really okay, and I create that safety from in here, makes it so much easier to desensitize the things out here that we have absolutely no control over, or very little control over, or even the perception of control over. Any level of it, we really don't. We just don't. The only thing that we ever have, truly have, is our own sovereignty, our own sovereignty, and our own ability to manage our own energy and everything about what we are about, everything that's related to our emotions. We can handle how we regulate and how we react and how we respond. But beyond that, it becomes less important most of the time. I've seen a lot of people very helped with, get internal about why it is that it's very important to do that. And I wasn't ready for that level of work. I needed a whole lot more intervention, like correct diagnosis and correct intervention based on correct diagnosis and correct awareness, self-awareness, that I can be self-aware that I have this need and this issue. Now let's take it another step of, why do I need this? Why wasn't related nearly as much to past history sometimes as it was to, this is an autistic need, this is a neurodivergent need, that I need to have a sense of comfort so that my nervous system isn't tapped constantly. And now, as I said, messy used to drive me crazy, and sometimes my desk looks like, a tornado went off on it, and okay, that's okay, because the rest of my nervous system isn't being tapped and constantly, jarred by other things. So the visual of it isn't tapping me as hard. It's not like, I'm taking $50 out of my bank account emotionally, and I only have, 51, because my environment is completely destroyed. And I also don't let it get to that point generally, because it's just, there's nothing that's keeping me in that anxiety-ridden spot. So I hope that's helped, and I hope that whatever you're doing today, that you are enjoying your day, whatever part of the day you're in, and get within your skin, because you're divine. It really is fine, and it can help you reach that place of peace of mind where perhaps you can begin to, let loose of those OCD tendencies, those needs to, try to control other people or other things or whatever, and at whatever level we can release that control if we care to. If we don't, I was pretty rooted in my cup, and that didn't change just because of that instance. Matter of fact, I got more rooted and fixated on it. So at whatever level we are, when we're ready and we care to release those control issues, we can come inside and find a way to ask God, our guide, spirit, universal intelligence, however we relate to our spiritual selves and higher knowledge, we can ask that to help guide us through that process and help us find the assistance out here with coaches, therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, whoever we need, Western medicine, Eastern medicine, no medicine, whatever it is. I'm not giving advice. I'm just saying that in here is a great place to start with finding that sense of peace and balance, which can help us to move through and find the assistance out here in 3D. So, as I said, take care of yourself. Have a beautiful day, whatever part of the day you're in, and be well and get within your skin, because you're divine. It is absolutely fine. Take care. I'll see you again next time. Goodbye, friends.